Hey guys, and welcome back to Logical Tarot. Today we're going to start a series that I'm going to call Logical Explorations, which is where I'm going to explore some spiritual or mystical things that I wouldn't normally gravitate towards. I want to explore these concepts and ideas with an open mind and really make sure that I'm giving everything the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I changed my mind about tarot, so it makes sense that I might change my mind about some other things too. So today we're going to talk about pendulums. What is a pendulum? Well, from a scientific standpoint, a pendulum is any object at the bottom of a string that moves back and forth. Spiritually speaking, this is a pendulum. This is my pendulum that I bought, I will admit, for this video, but he and I have been getting to know each other a little bit. We'll talk about that more later. You can see that it swings from a fixed point, which is at the end of this chain. Pendulums can be made out of stone, out of crystals, out of resin or glass or wood. They can be made out of pretty much anything. Anything that has a point at the end can be a pendulum. So whenever I explore a new topic, I always do research. I like to know the science behind the things I'm getting into, particularly when they are more spiritual based. Why am I trying a pendulum? Well, a lot of people told me to, is the short answer. As I was doing readings and getting lots and lots of yes or no questions, I kept getting encouragement from fellow readers and people in my inner circle to try a pendulum for yes or no answers. Of course, I immediately went to research this, and what I learned is that pendulums aren't quite as spiritual as I thought they were. I will admit, at the very beginning, I thought they were a little hokey. I thought it was a little far-fetched that an object at the end of a string could possibly accurately predict anything. As we do this logical exploration series, you're going to hear me use the term quantum a lot. And that's because a lot of these things deal in quantum physics or quantum mechanics or quantum energy. It's this idea that things in our world are beyond our explanation. Quantum physics is sort of the umbrella term that houses things like quantum mechanics. Quantum physics does its best to explain how everything works. It's the best description that scientists have of the nature of particles that make up matter and the forces with which they interact. Albert Einstein was famous for his many theories. He said that matter and energy are interchangeable. Quantum physics supports that idea. Quantum physics predicts strange things about how matter works that are completely at odds with how things seem to work in the real world. Quantum particles, or the stuff that makes up the entire universe, can behave like regular particles, but they can also behave like waves and be in several places at once. Einstein talked a lot about the theory of entanglement, which he coined as spooky action at a distance. Basically, something weird happening that you can't explain. Scientists for many, many years have tried to explain things like spirits and ghosts, and the best they can come up with, the closest they can come to making sense of it, is by quantum physics. So when you hear of pendulum reading, a lot of people talk about communicating with spirits or communicating with an ancient loved one or something like that, someone who's guiding you. I think that just like with tarot, the pendulum connects to parts of your subconscious mind that you don't have access to. When you're holding a pendulum and you're beginning to manipulate it, your brain sends tiny signals to your body that are not perceivable by the human eye. These signals allow your fingers to move in a way that's completely imperceptible to the naked eye. Basically, if you ask your mind a question, if you ask yourself a question, your subconscious may know the answer even though you don't. A lot of people use pendulums to answer yes or no questions, but a really popular area to use your pendulum is actually in finding things that are lost. That was fascinating to me, and I really needed to dig deeper to learn why that is. Scientifically speaking, our subconscious knows where we put our keys. We know that we set them down in the living room or wherever. We're able to tap into that. But when we think, where did I put my keys? I can't remember where I put them. Our conscious mind has no idea. If you use your pendulum to ask simple yes or no questions, you're able to narrow down where your keys might be and look from there. Now, do I think that this pendulum is going to help you find a missing child? Maybe, if you already know subconsciously who might have that child or where that child might be. I don't know that I agree with the use of pendulums for bigger things, like when we are dealing with abduction cases, or if we're looking for water, which a lot of people do use pendulums for. That's not something that I'm comfortable saying that I'm behind yet. I haven't done enough research. I haven't seen enough proof. I like proof. So let me talk to you a little bit about my pendulum. This is Felix. He came to me from a lovely local metaphysical shop. I picked him out, as you're supposed to do. You're supposed to pick one that speaks to you, and I picked this one. It is made of picture jasper, which is supposed to be good for grounding and clarity. We'll get into crystals and how I feel about them in a later episode of Logical Explorations. But he spoke to me, I liked it, and so I took him home. Again, I really wanted to approach this entire series with a really open mind. I wanted to approach it in a way that made sure I was able to receive anything that wanted to come my way or that did come my way. Me walking into a situation saying, there's no way pendulums work, there's no way crystals heal you, there's no way whatever else, that's not going to help me definitively prove for myself once and for all either way, because then I would be acting under confirmation bias. So before I started this, I really sat down with myself, I meditated, I thought on it, and I really made sure that I was going into this with an open mind. Whether it worked or not didn't matter. I was committed to doing it. I was committed to seeing the results and really seeing how I reacted, how the pendulum reacted, how life reacted around me. So I bought the pendulum, and there were so many pretty ones, and I wanted to buy more, I won't lie, because I like shiny things, crow brain. But I bought the pendulum, I brought it home, and I, again, wanted to have an open mind. So I sat down with it. I had already done research on what you're supposed to do when you first get a pendulum. So the first thing I did was I cleared it. I used sage to clear it. Again, herbs are coming to a later episode of Logical Explorations. So I used sage to clear the pendulum, and then I sat down and connected with it. The first thing that you're supposed to do is ask the pendulum how you will know what yes is, what no is, what maybe, what I don't know, all of those things. Because the pendulum is supposed to move either horizontally or vertically or in circles, depending on the meaning. And you need to know what your pendulum is saying. There are a lot of sites that encourage you to tell your pendulum what to say, but given that this was a new experience for me, I really wanted to see what the pendulum said. So the pendulum told me that moving forward and backward was yes. Moving horizontally side to side was no. Moving in a clockwise direction meant I don't know or you're not being clear. And moving in a counterclockwise direction meant I don't want to tell you. The next thing I wanted to do was find out this guy's name. So I sat down to ask a series of questions. I asked him if he was a female pendulum. He said no. I asked if he was male. He said yes. I asked if his pronouns were he, him. He said yes. And so on and so forth until I finally narrowed down what his name was. One thing that I kept seeing over and over as I was researching pendulums is the need to feel connected. Some people encourage you to bring your pendulum around with you. Some people encourage you to sleep with it or wear it on a chain. Almost everywhere I saw encouraged you to sit with it for a moment before using it, to hold it against your chest, to take deep breaths and really connect. And that lines up with the idea of us connecting with our higher self or our inner subconscious. Because logically, the best way to connect with the parts of ourselves that we don't normally connect to is actually to sit with ourselves. The other thing that I saw people suggesting a lot, which struck me as very sweet, is that when you sit down with your pendulum, you should first ask if you can ask it a question. If we're operating under the idea that this is a spirit or a higher power, I think that is very sweet and respectable to ask. The second thing that I saw recommended to ask over and over was if you are in connection with your higher self. So those are the two questions that I ask Felix every time I work with him. Felix, may I ask you a question? And Felix, am I in contact with my higher self? Something that I've noticed, which I think is very interesting and worth exploring a little bit more, is that Felix for me doesn't move very much. There is a very clear direction that I can tell, whether it's forward and backward or side to side or in circles. I can see a difference in those movements, but they're always very small. Even when I ask Felix to speak louder, I rarely get a more emphatic answer. I've seen pendulum readers whose pendulums are really going back and forth very fast and very exaggerated. And I think you could attribute that to either me just having started, or honestly, maybe I'm not in as much connection with my higher self as I should be. Maybe I'm not as in tune. That wouldn't surprise me. I struggle to do things like meditate and do things that connect to my higher self. And I think that falls right in line. So how do you use a pendulum? Well, you are supposed to put your elbow on a table on a solid surface and hold your pendulum in your hand by your thumb and forefinger. It should be a few inches above the ground. You can put your other hand underneath it to stabilize it and activate energies or push more energy into the pendulum. And then you ask a question. I tend to find myself closing my eyes when I ask questions, but you don't have to do that. All right, so what do I think? Do I believe in pendulum reading? Yes, for the same reason that I believe in tarot reading. I believe that it is a way to help us connect with our higher self. Now, do I think that I could answer someone else's yes or no question with one? Probably not. If you ask me if you and your boyfriend will break up next week, that's not something that I subconsciously know the answer to unless I happen to know you and your boyfriend really well. If you're someone on the internet, no, I don't think that I can give you an accurate reading. Obviously, I can tell you what I think might happen, but I don't feel like that is more accurate than you just asking me that question out of the blue and me answering. Now, I'm not saying that people who read pendulums are lying or that they're wrong. I think that there are people who are much more in tune to themselves than I am, and those people might be able to answer questions. Maybe I'll get to the place where I can, but right now, I think that they work. I think that there's definitely a space for that in my own mindfulness practice, in my own question asking of my life. But I don't think I'm going to be starting pendulum reading for the general public anytime soon. All right, guys, that is it for me today. That's it for this first episode of Logical Explorations. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you do. I do have several planned moving forward. So if it's something that you are enjoying, let me know that you want to keep seeing them. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment, share, follow me on Instagram, all of that stuff. If you want a private tarot reading, I do offer those. I've got my website linked below. I have everything you could possibly need to get in contact with me listed below. I encourage you to do so. I love hearing from you guys. I love helping you out. Until next time, bye.